Communications is the key. It's the foundation for any organizational change, for any kind of plan that goes on in a company. And too often, executives think the information itself or the merits of a particular plan is what's going to sell the deal. And that's where a lot of plans don't succeed. In any kind of an organizational change, in fact, change communications is a module, is a study all into itself. The first component must be the messaging and the structure of what that change is going to be. And now that in of itself has to be done in a step-by-step way in order to be successful. So first let's take it in a couple of steps and talk about what organizational change means from a messaging and then from an implementation standpoint. The first step is to get your stakeholders identified in a way that makes real sense in terms of protocol and influence. Think about every communication change as a campaign. I've worked in politics as well as in business communications, but the ingredients for business communications and change is the same as running a communications plan for a campaign. That means when you talk about your stakeholder identification, your first tier group that must be identified by your core team are those influencers, the people that can have real influence and help get buy-in on the rest of them. There must be an order, a tiering out or concentric circles of how you get this message delivered. Think about your communications as a two-way street. To be successful, you can't have this be just pushing out, because if you're not gathering input and recalibrating a message, then you're likely not to be successful. For example, the messaging should happen and the pre-buy-in should happen with your stakeholders you've identified prior to the official announcement. That way you have as much pre-buy-in before an announcement where it's really not a surprise to all the stakeholders. So in terms of tier stakeholding, your influencers, that's one tier. Who are those people that you're going to roll this out in a confidential manner with first? Get their input, recalibrate if need be, then they've been bought in, and then you move out to your second tier and so on. When talking about communicating change, again, with the emphasis being on this transformation time that needs to be put into place in terms of strategy and rollout of your stakeholder identification and small group communications. The tools are varied depending upon how large the groups are and how long your ultimate transformation time is. But for example, small groups are key. And then moving them into larger groups to continue to build that buy-in. People feel valued and special if they're talked about in a confidential way and given an opportunity to put in their buy-in, and then that's rolled out because that gives you momentum for this change. Ultimately, your tools are personality, the small groups. At the very end of it all is an institutional formal announcement that's put into guidebooks and formalized. In order for the correct information to get out there, again, the emphasis must be on that pre-buy-in, pre-announcement time, that due diligence situation where you're getting input from people that are influencers, and then you're incorporating that. You must make your plan incorporate the potential objections and your positive responses to those objections. You cannot expect to have success if you simply roll out, here are the benefits, here are the merits, end of story. You must have real interactive feedback from them before you roll out, because that way you've test-driven your messages, you've test-driven the reactions to these changes, and you've recalibrated them and demonstrated why they're positive changes with real feedback from the real employees who are going to be expected to implement and be a part of this change. I recently consulted with a multinational on a restructuring of a division. And part of that, before there was an actual rollout, was, as I've mentioned all along, getting members of this group, this target group, in the room to get their feedback about what would make the rest of the group excited about this change. Looking at the facets of it, what would be the potential reactions, and then moving forward from there. And it was determined in this small group that creating an actual campaign for all of the different employees to give their input through a video contest to come up with what the new look of this division would be like, what it means to them, was implemented simultaneously with some of the rollout of the changes that were going to be implemented. They were real contests with real winners, with real prizes, and it got everybody really excited about it, as opposed to feeling like something was being force-fed down their throats.